The other thing I'll say is just need to mention this because this is another big one is while you're taking the time to read these white papers and read about the history of computing, take the time to read source code. Whatever programming language you happen to choose that you happen to be working in, I don't care what it is. It could be anything. It could be JavaScript. It could be CSS if you're doing front end stuff. It can be back end server stuff. It could, C Sharp, Java, like the ones we talked about before, Visual Basic. Um, it could be uh, Clojure. It could be Ruby, Python, um, you name it, Rust, C, C++, whatever it is, right? Lisp, OCaml, I love OCaml, StandardML, Haskell, Erlang, Elixir, uh, LFE, list flavored Erlang, anything that runs on the beat, right? It could be any of these programming language, Perl, um, whatever it is. Go find some source code on it. Open source projects. Get out to GitHub and just find something and just start reading it. Just start reading it. If you know you're going to be working in something every single day, like, I don't know, maybe you're a Java programmer, or maybe you're, I mean, if you're working in, if you're working, if you're getting in, if you actually have a job working with programming languages like Clojure and Erlang and Elixir and, you know, uh, uh, Prolog, like if you are like you don't, if you're already working in these languages, chances are you know how to do what I'm about to tell you or what I'm telling you right now. But if you're just starting out, or if you're experienced and you just haven't dug into these other paradigms and you haven't explored these programming languages that I'm mentioning here, if any of these languages sound completely brand new to you, like you've never even heard of them, Julia, if you've never heard of any of these programming languages, then you need to pick the programming language that you're going to be working in every single day on your job and go find an open source project to read. You don't have to. A lot of people tell you to like go, get into an open source project and go contribute. That's great. And the open source communities around these projects definitely want you to come and contribute. They need you at the end of the day. And as long as you have something to contribute, as long as you can help them out in some way, of course, that's a great thing to do. But in the beginning, you might not have the confidence. You might not be ready to submit a pull request. Like, so just read. This falls under that category of just reading. When you read source code, when you pick up an open source project and you start reading source code from everywhere, it doesn't just have to be like Git or whatever. There's source code everywhere. You just got to go look for it. When you find source code to download and just read, you will pick up so many patterns, so many amazing ways to do something. You will pick up snippets. You will understand how to do things so much better than what you taught yourself. because you're able to look at other people's code, other people's comments. You'll be able to see how they structure it, how they think about it, how they document it. And this will be the thing that you can take and apply immediately. When I started to do this, I gotta give credit where credit's due here. Like I told you before, like I started the .NET community, and I started listening to, as soon as podcasts were like a big thing, even before they were a big thing, and there was just blogs. I would read Scott Hanselman's blog, and he's the one who told me, he said, you programmers just need to just read source code. Just read it. And that's what I did. And as soon as I started to do that, oh my gosh, I found all this C# code, and I would just read it. And I would learn how to do all kinds of stuff. I would just pick it up after I got home from work, spend some time with the family and the kids. But as soon as they kind of go off and do their thing, right? Or the kids go to bed and the wife, starts watching her shows, man, I would just pick up an open source C# project. I would just start reading code, and I would just pick up stuff. And the very next morning, I would get in and I would see something I wrote a week ago, and I would just throw it out and do it the way I just learned about it because that was better. I would be able to just immediately just start writing code better. And I would submit stuff, and when it came time for my team lead or my manager or whomever to do a code review, again, this is the thing that will make you seem experienced even though you're not. Yet, we get into these code reviews, and sometimes I would stump even my team lead. I would stump my manager because they learned how to write in a certain way, but then they just stopped, right? They know how to implement a solution and solve a problem in the programming language. But like I was telling you, there are so many different ways to solve the same problem, whether you're using different programming languages under different paradigms, or you're using the same programming language, but you might be using a new version of it. There might be newer libraries. There might be little ways of like using older libraries that just weren't published in any books. And so you pick up all kinds of amazing ways of solving problems. And I am not exaggerating when I say amazing. And so you take the time, you read source code. Read a lot of source code. Read source code from many languages, because this helps you in so many ways. Not just writing better source code. It's these little things I'm telling you about, like the code reviews, the conversations. Um, when these things happen, these are the things that just like continue to boost you up amongst your peers without you really even doing anything. You're just speaking. You're just showing. You're explaining why and how you came to the solution, how you wrote that, right? And a lot of the times it's going to be like, wow, I didn't even know that all I had to do was download this additional library and include it into my project. And all of a sudden, I have access to these libraries that do all these wonderful things. And it's not standard in the programming language. It's an additional thing that I just download and snap in. Like, it will start to happen, right? the more you learn and the more you are exposing yourself to source code, again, it will just, you'll download it, it'll be there. And when conversation comes up, when code reviews come down the pipe, it's just boom, like people will literally, the lid will just literally be blown off. Like they will wonder how you came to this. They will be surprised. They will be like, I didn't even know this library existed. And you'll look like you're experienced. You will behave as if you are experienced. This is what the experienced do. This is what we do. And again, you're bubbling yourself up. You're constantly getting to a new level with every conversation, with every code review, with every annual review, whatever it is, right? Every time you open your mouth, every time you get to the whiteboard, every time someone is talking about a technical thing and they just can't think of it, like it's, oh, we need to do this thing, but I can't remember what it's called. And you'll just be like, oh, that's because, again, in the background, while everyone else is doing whatever they're doing, you're getting better. You're reading source code. You're learning how to do new things. You're learning how to do things you know better. And you're open to that, right? You're picking up things from other programming languages. When you expose yourself to other programming languages, you now know how to structure a problem differently. And now you are thinking differently. And when you go in to your job and you are talking with other people, and everybody else can only think in this one way, you are literally out here doing all kinds of, learning all kinds of different ways to make this better, more efficient, faster, smaller, like everything. And these are the things. These are the things that will get you to where you want to go. People, again, will pull you aside. Show me how this works. Show me how this really works. I want to know how your team lead or your manager will pull you aside when you do this, because you will bring them something. You will check something in that blows the lid off their brain. They won't know how you even came up with it, why it works so well, and they will pull you aside and they will ask you, can you please tell me how this is working? And this is what you want. Because you write it down in your journal, you bring it up at a meeting during that annual review, whenever you want to negotiate, and they have forgotten that conversation. They have forgotten everything that you brought, but you haven't. You've written it all down, you've stored it along with everything else that you're storing. And these are the things that are going to continue to help you. So read source code, expose yourself to different programming languages. It's going to be uncomfortable at first, but again, once you do a couple from different paradigms, it's not going to be difficult anymore. I'm telling you, it's going to be easy, because as long as you understand the paradigms, you will understand how to read the code. You'll understand the programming language. You just will. Every single programming language has what's called its own idioms. These are just standard vanilla ways of solving a problem under a paradigm or under a language. And you'll be able to leverage that. You'll be able to lean on that and say, okay, I learned Lisp, that was difficult, but I learned how to deal with lists. I learned how to apply functions over lists. When you go to Haskell, it's the same damn thing. It's just in a slightly different way. It's using a slightly different syntax, right? It's not difficult, and it will expand your mind, and you will rise above everyone. You will rise above everyone, I'm telling you. So yeah, read. So I'm getting off on a rant here. Read source code. You will benefit so much from it. This is one of those things like the history of computing. Like if you take this, do this now, do this tonight, because I guarantee you, you will pick up something. You will go into your job tomorrow, and you will be able to. You'll see something either you wrote or someone else wrote. You'll be tasked with some problem, and you'll be like, you know what? This can be better. Let me make this better real quick. And you'll just do it. You'll make it better. And from that moment when you check in that code and it's reviewed, that's when you will you'll just start to climb up that ladder. You will start to elevate your game. And it will just happen immediately. A lot of this stuff, the papers, those are going to take a little while for you to digest. But it's totally worth your time, I'm telling you. When you do it, and you know it, and you can start to see stuff, it will take you so far past just reading source code that the two things, just those two things combined, it will get you there. But doing everything that I'm talking about, like journaling and negotiating, these are all the things. This is how you use the whole package to elevate your lifestyle. Everything you want to get from this industry, not just learning how to solve problems and learning how to write efficient code because that's what you enjoy, but you have a life. Remember, if you have a family, if you are just starting out, you're by yourself, you still have a life. You still want things, right? You still want to go places. You still want to go out with your friends every now and again. I'm not saying you should never do that. I'm saying you should be able to pick the right time to do these things. And when you do actually take that mental break and you unplug for a little bit and you go hang out with your friends, you don't want to be constrained to what you can do because of what you can afford. You want to be able to go out and have a really good time. You want to be able to drive around in that car you want to drive around in. You should be able to drive that car up to the place where you want to live. These are the things that you really want. Doing all of this stuff has taught me that that's how I get it. That's how I stay ahead of every single person that I work with, including a lot of the time my team leads and my managers. So, I mean, there's been a couple of times where I've been fortunate enough to work with people who have PhDs in computer science, and some of the stuff that I've brought to them, some of the stuff that I showed them, I've gotten compliments on. And they understand it because when you have a PhD, you already know all of this. You're basically a researcher. I would say even some people that have gone past their master's degree to a certain extent know all of this. But you'd be surprised how many master's degrees I've come across that don't know it or don't care anymore. Like they just lost their momentum. And so um, doing these things will elevate you so quickly. This is way better than just trying to get a job at what's called the big four, like the Facebooks and the Microsofts and the Apples and the Googles and you know, of the world, the Ubers now, the Lyfts, these companies, these big tech companies, um, you can get into them, and maybe I'll do another video about what it's like when you finally get in because I did work for Microsoft for a little while, um, and I have been on interviews for places like Google, but in my opinion, when you're doing these things, they will take you so much further in other places besides these big companies, because these big companies, they basically have a lot of people that know a lot of this stuff. Um, they may not even be putting it into practice. They may know about it, but they might not be putting it into practice, even at these big companies. And so, um, yeah, doing these things will definitely elevate you so fast. Like you won't even realize how fast. You will blink, and all of a sudden, you will realize you are explaining something, and you see everyone's eyes just go, oh man. And that's when you know you got them. That's when you know you've taken another step. And that's when you start to feel it. That's when you start to see it. And you know the benefits are right around the corner. You know. You almost, after a while, you will know exactly how to do it. It will become that mechanical to you, and you will be able to catch that reaction from people that matter, and you'll know, all right, I'm good. I know I'm going to be getting a good raise now. Like, you'll just know. You will just know that the right thing has just happened, and you are in exactly the spot you want to be in. So that will come with time, but read source code. Read the source code. Just read it. Even if you don't understand it, try to figure it out. Try to figure out what they're doing. And this will be easier in a language you're already kind of working in, and it will be more difficult in a language you're not working in. But I guarantee you, the time that you put into it will pay you. Listen to me. It will literally pay you money. It will get you out of the office. If you're in a cubicle, it will get you out of the cubicle. If you are in one of these places that's like open and everybody's around and it's supposed to feel like this big, nice team environment, and that kind of makes you uncomfortable, it will get you out of that. Because I, a long time ago, decided I was going to do Erlang. I was going to get on the beam. I didn't know exactly how I was going to do it, but I knew the steps. I had already figured that part out. I bought all the books on Erlang that I could find. I have like 6 or 7 books on Erlang. I've got like all the books on Elixir. Erlang is closer to my heart than Elixir at this point, but I know them both. And the thing for me was I wanted to just get out. I didn't want to be in an office anymore. I wanted to be 100% remote. And I found a gig. I took a pay cut at first. This was a big deal because I was comfortable doing the .NET thing. I was doing functional programming. I was doing F Sharp. I was doing OCaml. I was doing a little bit of Erlang. I was bringing a little bit of Erlang into the organization. I got my managers to let me write Erlang in a .NET shop. And so I did that, but I was tired of commuting. I was tired of going into the office. I was tired of really of working with people that just were not at the level that I grew to. I grew to a level where everything I was saying was like nothing was landing to people. Nothing, and you will see this. You will see this, and you know that it's time to go. It's time to move on. Um, when other people are not growing and they're holding you down, it's time to go. Um, you really shouldn't be at a place longer than I would say 3 years. Because in 3 years, you should know enough about a company and you should know enough about the people you work with. You should be able to see whether or not they're growing. And If it's not happening, it's time to go. Period. It's just time to go. It's time to move on. It's time to grow. That's what you want to keep doing. And that was the other thing that I learned is that you grow more by moving and just going different places, meeting different people, learning new things, solving different problems. That's how you grow. That's how you expand your career. That's how you expand your knowledge. That's how you're able to solve problems better. Is you can come out of an industry 3 years into a whole new industry and you can say, oh, this is how I solved this problem in this other industry, right? When I worked in finance, this is how we solved this. Or when I worked in gaming, this is how we solved this, right? This applies here, right? So that's how you grow. That's how you move forward. I'm getting off on a rant. I want to just talk about source code, but it all connects. Like, it's all connected. So, yeah, read some source code on your programming language that you use right now or that you're interested in. You'll learn so much. You will become an experienced programmer faster just by reading source code, and it's free. You don't have to go buy a book. Like, don't feel like you have to go on Amazon and buy a book. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's fun. Like, I like to do it. I still do it to this day. Like, I typically like to look for older computing books today. Like, I don't know where it is, but I look for older computing books, computer science books. I look for books that are related to technologies that I like. Um, so I will do that from time to time, but you get so much more from source code because it's out there, it's free, it's evolving, it's changing over time, it's getting better. It will probably be more efficient and it will be newer stuff than the stuff you're working on, than the stuff your company is giving you to work on. Like a lot of companies will standardize on older versions of a programming language. And they do this because they're just people and people try to like have control and they think as long as we are tied to this one version, it will be easier to manage. And to a certain extent that's true, but think about they don't know, they don't realize everything they're giving up by just standardizing on one version and moving that version slowly, right? So when you go out and you find these open source projects and you start reading them, you're gonna find stuff that's new. That's fine. That's great because you're ahead already of the people you work with. Just from a syntactic perspective, just from the pure raw code, there's a library that already does this. Too bad I can't use it, but I can go read the source code of how it's implemented, and typically the implementation is based on an older library. So, in many cases, what I've found in my experience is that I might be on an older version of a runtime, but if I go look at the source code, a majority of the source code doesn't necessarily depend on having a new version of the runtime. There might be some code in there that depends on the current version of the runtime that you are using. Think about that. You can now read this code, understand it, and leverage it. Yeah, I could go all day on this, but it's already been it's already been 30 minutes just talking about reading source code. So, yeah, man, just for everyone out there, just read source code. Um, what I did in the beginning and what I still do to this day is I'll print it out. I just print it out. I'll have it with me while I lay in bed, or if it's during the day or something and it's a nice day. I'm in Hawaii now, so it's pretty nice every day, and I will grab some source code. I'll set aside some time. I'll grab some source code. I'll just walk outside. I'll listen to the birds, and I'll just read source code. Um, Today I'm doing it with quantum computing. Um, so I'm reading source code for quantum computing stuff. I'm reading just quantum physics stuff, even though a lot of it is new and a lot of it is like going over my head. I'm still just trying to get it in. I'm trying to make some sense of it. Um, but I'm setting time aside to do it. And one day it will pay off. One day I will be able to say that I am a programmer programming on a quantum computer. It will just happen. It will happen. So read some source code. Don't stop. Pick all different kinds of projects, right? Because in different projects you'll pick up different things, and you'll be able to use it from. You'll be able to use it in a matter of minutes. You will pick up something. You may, like in my case, I picked up something. I had access to the source code repository from home, and I just pulled the source code. I just checked it out right then and there, changed it, wrote some tests. It was good still. It was better. It was faster. I profiled it, checked it back in. The next morning, when I walked in the office, my boss pulled me aside and said, "Hey, I saw you checked out some code last night. Where did this come from?" I didn't tell him directly. I just said, just came to me, right? You can play this game. Don't feel like you need to go into detail on stuff. Keep it at a high level. Keep people at a high level. It will always keep them thinking. How? How? How does she know this? How does he know that? It will keep them thinking. And as long as they're thinking, you have the upper hand. You have the advantage. You have the edge. And when you say that you want this, they know. They already know. They must give it to you. Because if they don't give it to you, they know you will go somewhere else and somebody else will give it to you. That's just how this industry works. It will always work like that. What you know, somebody will always pay you more money. Someone will always give you more perks for what you know. Because what you know, starting to put these things into practice, is way more than what the average person knows, what the average person is doing. You're way past that now. So they must give you what you want. They have no choice. They need you. You no longer need them. When you get to this point, you are checking your own check boxes, right? You're getting what you want out of the opportunity. You're helping this company move forward. You're helping them beat their competitors and stay ahead of their competitors. And they know this. And you know this. So they must give you what you want. There is no choice. If they want to stay ahead and they want to continue to have someone like you who is bringing them creative solutions, who is bringing them, you know, all kinds of little tweaks here and there in the middle of the night when everybody else is sleeping, they must give you what you want. No one else is going to do this, I guarantee you, that you work with. There may be one person, but I guarantee you that one person isn't doing everything that I'm telling you here. So this will work. I know from my own experience. I've talked to other people and shared with other people that are really close to me some of this stuff, but definitely not all of it. Like, it's all coming out. I mean, it's all coming out. So I've never told a lot of people a lot of this stuff that I'm telling you, and I know it works. It just will. It just will. Um, so yeah, source code, read source code, practice, put it into practice, rewrite it, like just for the muscle memory. Just write it, rewrite it, reread it, compile it, profile it. And for those of you that don't really know what profiling is, all it is it's taking a little bit of code that you write and you're executing it to see how fast it performs, right? It takes some input, and the more input you give it, right, the more time it may take for that little bit of code to process and give an output or some result. And what we tend to say in industry when we talk about profiling things is we're profiling and we're looking at different inputs to a section of code or excuse me, a snippet of code, and we're seeing how it performs under really large inputs, or we're seeing how it performs under just different kinds of inputs. And the faster you can get it to perform, to produce a result, a correct result, by the way, um, and the faster you can get it to go through any checks that it might need to go through before, otherwise it might throw an error or some kind. you know that's profiling, and the faster you can make that, the more efficient it is, and the better the better that particular area of the code will perform. And when you start to look at code bases, you'll start to see areas that are hot, like areas where users are interacting with a system in some way, and there's just this path. There's like this one input, and it just goes all the way to this one output. And you'll start to see that this path is just really, really hot. Like a lot of the time, data is coming through here as opposed through some other area of the code base. And you can look at those hot paths and you can profile those hot paths. And if you see something in an open source project that could go right here in this section of this hot path, you just contributed. You just made a key change. You just made a key improvement that will ultimately find its way into production, and you can write that down in your journal. I mean, so read the source code. It will benefit you tremendously. Um, let's see what else.